Let's take a look at our I can statements today. I can read and construct bar graphs with large numbers. Great. I know how to read them. I'm working on constructing them today. I can round numbers to the hundred millions, and we've been practicing rounding numbers a lot. I can identify the halfway point with numbers to the hundred millions. So this last one, identifying the halfway point with numbers to the hundred millions, we've been practicing this a little bit, and it's really important in graphing because sometimes our scales are very, very large, like counting by 100 million. Let's take for an example that our scale might be 100. Well, if I want to find halfway between 0 and 100, that would be 50. Half of 100 is 50. Now, if I'm trying to get halfway between 100 and 200, I can't just take half of 200 because half of 200 is 100. I want to find the halfway point between these two. So I think about the space, and the space there is 100. 100 to 200 is 100 apart. And half of 100 is 50. So 100 plus 50 more would be 150. Let's rewrite that, 150. Likewise, if I'm going between 200 and 300, I'm not trying to find half of 300, I'm trying to find half of this space. Well, the distance between 200 and 300 is just 100. Half of 100 is 50, so it would be 50 more than the lower number for a total of 250. Now let's take this and apply it to a graph. So with pictographs and bar graphs, we have to do a lot of rounding and estimating. If I had a bar that went up this high, I can see that it does not go straight to 100 or 200. It looks like it's about halfway between 100 and 200. So I need to figure out what is halfway between 100 and 200. Well, again, that space is 100, and I need to find half of that space. Half of that space is 50, so it must be a total of 150. 50 more than 100. Now let's take this leap right here and say, instead of having this be counting by ones, let's say it's counting by millions. So sometimes you'll see that it's labeled on the side that you're counting by millions. So now we've got 100 million, 200 million, and 300 million. Well, nothing really changed. I am trying to find halfway between 100 million and 200 million now. So the only thing I would need to write after this is 6 more zeros. So this bar now represents 150 million. Likewise, if I had a taller bar and it went between 200 and 300, that looks like it's about halfway. So again, I would look at that space and say, well, that's 200 to 300 million would be 100 million apart, and half of that is 50 million. So I would need to add that to the lower number. So it would be 250 million is the halfway point. Again, finding halfway is really, really important in bar graphs and pictographs because a lot of times we will see bars go to halfway between two spaces, and pictographs, if our scale or if our key was this picture and this equaled 100, a lot of times you will see half of that picture, which would equal half of that, 50. So now we're going to practice reading some bar graphs. This one is a single bar graph, or just a regular bar graph, because each space down here only has one bar for it. Now we just practiced finding halfway points, so let's look here, and I noticed that my scale on the left side is in millions. So this is 50 million, 100 million, 150 million, 200 million, and 250 million. I also noticed that some of my bars do not go, actually none of them go directly to a line. So all of these, I'm going to have to estimate about how many people does this represent. Let's look at this first one in 1998. I see that it's halfway between 100 million and 150 million. Well, that space is 50 million, which I'm just going to write as 50 mil. Now, half of 50 is 25, right? So half of 50 million is 25 million. So now I know what the halfway point is right here, and I would be at 125 million. Now I forgot to do a couple of things when I was looking at this originally, so I want to stop and re-look at these. The first thing I really want to do when I'm looking at a graph is look at the title. It's talking about population of a country. So now I know what I'm looking at. These are representing the population. I also noticed something else about the bars. They are all increasing. They all go up from the year before. So that's a pattern that I should notice. And then again on the left side, I'm looking at population. That's the title of the side. And it's talking about it in millions. And on the bottom, we're talking about years. So 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. Next, I want to take a look at 2001. Find 2001 on the graph. There it is. I see that it is not halfway, so I would not estimate this to be halfway between 150 million and 200 million. I'd say it's really, really close to 200 million. But I wouldn't say it's 200 million, because it's not. And the people who made this graph did this on purpose. They wanted you to make sure that you know that this is not yet 200 million. So what would you estimate that this is? Well, it's between 150 million and 200 million. And we know that halfway would be about here. And that would be halfway between those two numbers would be 175 million. So it's got to be more than 175 million. I would say that a good estimate for this is probably about 190 million. It's really, really close to 200 million. It might even be a little higher than that, maybe 192 million or something like that. So it's really important to pay attention to where in between these two lines does this fall. The graph maker made sure that they didn't put it halfway because that would represent a different number. That would represent 175. They wanted you to see that it's really, really close to 200 million, but it's not there. All right, take a look at my next question here. It says, in what year was the population about 170 million people? I want you to pause the video and think. All right, I'm back. I want you to see my thinking on this. 170 million people. So on my scale on the left side, I'm going to find where 170 would be, 170 million. So 100, 150, it's going to be more than this. And I also helped myself out a little bit here, and because I already wrote 175 million. So I would follow this over and try to find that space. Well, this year, the year 2000, I would say that the population was about 170 million. This is another reason why it's really important to know how to find half. And I can see that this is a little less than half. If I look about where halfway would be, I would say it would be right about there. And this is a little bit, the year 2000 is a little bit less than halfway. So if we look at our I can statements, we've really done all of them already. We've found halfway, we can round numbers to the 100 millions, and we can read and construct bar graphs. I want you to see one more type of bar graph. This is going to be a double bar graph. So this looks a lot like problems 4, 5, and 6 in your book if you're following along right now. The numbers have been changed though, so do not use this to solve your answers in the book. So the first thing I noticed in this graph is that it's missing some labels. So I'm going to label each side. I noticed that the bottom is the year, so I'm going to label that. The left side is the number of people, and it's just written out 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000. So I look at my scale, they're counting by 10,000 in each. And I notice the commas are missing, so that might be a little confusing. And finally, I really need a title for my whole graph. So this is called Attendance at Carnival and Picnic. So the first things I really want to notice, I already talked about the scale on the left side, so it's counted by 10,000s. We're comparing 3 different years here, and I've got 2 bar graphs for each year. And over on the left side here, or on the right side, sorry, in your book it's going to be underneath, but I've got the key So blue is going to equal the picnic, the attendance at the picnic, and red is going to be the attendance at the carnival. Now, really quickly, this bar graph helps me see that each year the carnival has a lot more people. So the carnival is more popular. I can come to that conclusion. I can also see that both of them are becoming more popular throughout the years. Both of them have an increasing attendance. Rounding is also really important for me in this graph because, or not rounding, but estimating what these bars are, because look at the red ones. They all fall between two lines. So I could see that this is about halfway between 70,000 and 80,000. So it must be about 75,000. Remember while you're working today that these were the I can statements. So this is what you need to be focusing on. I can read and construct bar graphs with large numbers. I can round numbers to 100 millions. And I can identify the halfway point, that was a huge point today, with numbers to the 100 millions.